The Shepnaz Podcast begins now.
Welcome to the Shepnaz Podcast. I'm Joe, and I'm your host today. And today I have with me Cristy and Bob Stephenson, and we are getting ready for the GRIN Summer Lunch Program that actually has been ongoing with GRIN since about the end of May. And our one-for-one this month is GRIN. Each Sunday morning, we do what we call one-for-one, where for every person that attends, either online in Gahanna or in Johnstown, we give $1 on their behalf to a local or global ministry. And for the month of June, we are focusing on GRIN, which is Gahanna Residents in Need. And we have Cristy and Bob in with us, long-term members of Shepherd Church and great workers, power couple here. And we would love to have them to talk a little bit about the ministry that they do there. So welcome in, guys.
Thanks for having us, Joe.
Now, Cristy, I know that Bob is your emotional support animal that's here today because you were a little shy about coming on, but we want to welcome you in. If you would, tell us a little bit about kind of your role in the summer lunch program, and then we'll kind of go back and get a little bit into the history of how it came about. But what are you currently doing for the summer lunch program?
Well, I represent Shepherd through GRIN. Local churches pick up a week or two, one or two sites each week, and they serve the food. And so I am just the one that organizes everything. I have a large crew, 12 to 15 people that work underneath me, and they do the work.
Well, I mean, every good leader, that's the way it's supposed to work, right? So the leaders are supposed to lead, and I guess the workers are supposed to work. But the good leaders, they do a lot of the work also, and I know you do as well. So this program goes pretty far back. You had mentioned that, there was a program, the way the program had started was back in 2013. So could you tell us a little bit about kind of the evolution of this program over the years?
Yeah, I didn't really know myself, and I had to ask Beth Bentley, who is our GRIN rep, a little bit about it. Apparently, in the past, there was a group called the Bridges Summer Lunch Club that was working with the government, and there were certain requirements for families. You had to be on free and reduced lunches and things like that in order to get some food. And when GRIN took over, a lot of that requirement went away, and they made it a lot easier for families in need to get the food. They've been doing it since 2013, and I was trying to think. Ken and Marie Hughes were in charge during 2016 and 17, and then I shadowed them in 17 and took over in, I shadowed them in 17 and took over in 18. And then when Bob retired in 20, he came on board, and I don't know how I ever did it without him. He's my heavy lifting guy and my chef in the mornings and my head cook.
The brute force and the finesse in the kitchen. That's nice.
She's the brains, I'm the muscle.
All right, that works. Well, you mentioned, I want to give some of the numbers here that you had given me. Kind of the idea of how much of a spread that there is and how this program has grown, and it has grown exponentially. So 2019 included 5,151 meals being given out, and those were actually sit-down meals, which we'll get into how that's transitioned over the time. 2020, which was COVID, it tripled and went up to 13,000. 2021 went back to kind of the sit-down meals, and it was down to 7,000. 2022 go back to boxes, and now we pump up to 14,083. 2023 was 16,240, and in 2024 up to 16,788. And those have transitioned to what you're calling to-go boxes. Can you talk a little bit about how the lunch program has changed from being kind of a come here and eat and sit down and we get the chance to kind of mingle with you, as opposed to what it is now with the to-go boxes?
Before you do that, let me ask a question, because even though I'm involved in the program, define those numbers a little bit better. 14,000 what? Are those individual meals?
Mm-hmm.
Is that for the entire program?
For the summer.
Okay, so that's not just the Shepherd, but that's the entire program.
Right.
Through the summer, meals to families. Okay, thank you.
And that program begins right at the end of the school year, and then runs through August. So
the first day of school is my understanding.
So you're about a 3-month period of time, that give or take a little bit, depending on when school ends and when it starts again.
Yeah. When I took over, we were what we call in person. And we would set up a buffet line, and the families would come in. They would grab their food. We would serve them. They would go sit at the tables in the school cafeterias. We could walk around and refill their drinks. We could give them more ketchup, things like that. Get to know them a little bit, talk to them, build a relationship as you get to see them every day for a week. They also had a couple sites that had some book libraries, or just old books, free books that nobody, schools were getting rid of as they get new ones in. And so the kids could take those books home. They could read them and bring them back and exchange them out or keep them. It didn't matter. And that was a wonderful program too. But then, of course, that all changed with COVID. And now the families come. They do check in with a GRIN representative. So there is one at each site. And
they have to be registered with GRIN.
Correct.
Yeah, it's pretty well controlled by GRIN. So we don't have to do that part of the process.
Which I appreciate that. I would not want to do that.
And as far as that whole screening process, there's, as you had mentioned before, in its foundations, it was tied to some government funding, but they found that was too restrictive, because based off of the government funding, they could only help certain people that the government said was okay to help. And they wanted to be a little wider spread than that. And so they, in faith, kind of stepped aside and said, oh, you know what? We'll walk away from the government funding so that we can do what we feel like God is calling us to do, and able to minister to a lot more people that way. Obviously, there's always risk involved when you don't know what you're getting into and how is God going to make this work. But certainly he has blessed it over the years and has blessed that effort. It is a little harder, and we find this in a lot of different areas of ministry these days, of making those connections, because people interact a little differently than they used to. They may not be as open to sitting down and having a meal with strangers and having somebody come up and talk to them while they're having a meal with strangers. That does change the dynamic a little bit, right?
Yeah, and it shows in the numbers. You can tell they dropped by half when they went back to the sit-down part, because we thought that's what was best. But then when we went back to go, it went right back up into the 14,000s.
It's a lot easier to take a meal and leave and go back to the comfort of your home or whatever, and not be under that pressure or stigma to be in a group. So I can see how that works better for the individual in the long run. It kind of goes back to the question of what am I doing for ministry? I'm still serving a need. So,
and I think it's such a sign of being of a servant's heart and being willing to do what is best for the person that you're trying to minister to, instead of the way you would want to minister. And there's probably a lesson to be learned there for a lot of areas of ministry, of sometimes we get into a channel of how we think ministry should work. And we think, we want to be able to connect with these people. So we want them to come in and we want them to sit down and we're going to make friends with them. And they may, the people on the receiving end, I'm just hungry. Right. And so really, you do have to shed yourself of whatever your preconceptions are and say, you know what, if this is the way God is blessing and this is going to reach more people, then we just have to kind of trust God that he's going to do what needs to be done and just extend his love to as many people as we possibly can. So
and be willing to work within the parameters of what the ministry is. Several churches are doing this. It could look several different ways to the recipients, But since GRIN controls it, it's done this way. The folks are used to how it's done, and the churches just come along and say, we do A, B, and C, and we'll do A, B, and C, and everybody does A, B, C.
Now, there's a lot of planning that goes on into getting these meals ready. And you talked a little bit about how they've gotten better about kind of record keeping. They know we had this many people come this past week. And so tell us a little bit how that process works. And when it's our week, which is coming up this week, that this coming week, starting June 16th, is going to be Shepherd's Week, helping with the GRIN Summer Lunch Program. So in the next couple days, I think you guys are going to take a shopping trip, right?
A very large shopping trip. Yes. It starts with the menu. Normally, we kind of stick with the menus that we've had in the past. They kind of, flow, and we know what we're doing with that. And then we start in on the grocery list, and I have 4 or 5 tabs open at the top of my computer, and one's for Sam's, and one's for BJ's, and one's for Kroger's, and just go through and try to find the best price for the different items that we need. Then I print them all out, and we head off to Sam's Club, and usually we have 2 carts. We're each pushing a flatbed that is just full by the time we're done.
Full.
So, yes, very full. But I do want to give a shout out to Eva Johnston, my cousin. She does have the BJ's membership card, and so we use her, and we appreciate her help in all of that. So last year we spent about $2,000, a little bit over $2,000 for what we call 2 sites, Royal Manor and Goshen Lane. This year, when the schedule came out, there was only 1 site available. Another church had the other site. So we do have the larger of the 2 sites. And when I looked at the spreadsheet that Beth has started putting out, you can see that they've served 142 meals on Monday. They served 2 custodians, 4 volunteers, for a total of 150 or so meals. So I know that we'll be probably buying for about 175 meals. We'll add 25 onto that just to make sure we have plenty.
And then you're doing that for Monday through Friday. So there's 5 days. Is there any extra other than that, or?
Nope. For this week, we just do the 5 days, but actually we get Thursday off because Juneteenth is a holiday.
Oh, okay.
So, and sometimes the summer lunch program is tied in, every time it's tied in with summer school. Mm-hmm. So if they're not in school, we don't serve. So until it ends. And then once summer school ends, they continue.
Now, I saw in our notes that you had mentioned that sometimes are some extra meals left over because you don't want to run out. So you want to make sure that you have enough. And so maybe you're planning for 700 meals or whatever for the week. And what happens with the extra stuff if you've prepared more meals than what you end up using?
Well, we always run down the custodians. Sometimes there was construction workers one year at Chapel Field. So we always check with them and make sure they don't need a meal. We make sure our volunteers have what they need. And then we sometimes pass it out to the police station or our fire stations, our local fire stations. We just pass out the extra meals, especially if they're already prepared and ready to go. If there's things that we can use again, Friday's menu always has leftovers at the end. So if we have some Rice Krispie treats left over or some fruit snacks or applesauce cups, we'll just throw those in the bag and just make sure that they're getting them. But if there's like a big case of something that we haven't opened and we're not going to use it again, we send that back to GRIN and it goes on the shelf.
Okay.
And the GRIN rep is familiar with the families. And so a lot of times as we're getting to the end of the day's servings, if there's extra food, that GRIN rep that's there with us will say, this family could take some more, or this family could take some. Like on hot dog days, we may send a package of hot dogs and buns to a family because they can use them. And the GRIN reps a lot of times even have extra food with them. I can think in the past, and I think they're like subsidy foods, like one year there were bags of pecans or walnuts, or there might be packages of stuff, and every family that comes in addition to their meal, they may get this other supplemental stuff that's just been made available.
I remember the year there was pineapple, and so every family got to grab a whole big pineapple and take it back with them. Yeah.
So you guys are going to be doing this all next week. come Monday morning, tell me what that day looks like and kind of walk us through the process of from the time the day starts and you get people fed and all that. What does that look like?
Well, it starts with her yelling at me and saying, you got to get out of bed whether you want to or not.
That's right.
You're going to help. And I do.
Just
Yes,
because
you
you're
do.
retired doesn't mean you're done working.
That's right. Well, I do want to give another shout out to Gina in the kitchen because we really appreciate her and the head cook letting us come into their space. On Friday, after we get back from Sam's Club, we'll bring everything to the church, and the counters are full, and we have a little refrigerator space, and the freezer's full and stuff like that. But Bob and I usually show up about 9:00. In the past, when we had 2 sites, we would begin to sort out all the food because you have to have the right number of applesauce cups to each site. That's kind of things. This year, it's going to be a whole lot easier because everything's going to the same site. Bob will get started on the main meal that needs to be cooked. We're doing chicken patty sandwiches, so those are frozen, so he'll lay those out on a tray and get them in the oven and cook all of those up, and then they go in a roaster. We've got green beans, so those will go in a roaster. Another day we're doing hot dogs, so those will go in a pot and boil on the stove, and then they go in the roaster.
I cook them in the oven now.
Oh, you cook them in the oven? Sorry.
They taste better.
They taste better. Okay, good. Then Wednesday we do pancakes and syrup and sausage. So the sausage will have to get cooked up. And then Friday we're going to do pizza, so that's our easy day. But whatever the main meal is, we get started on that. At 10:00, we have our portion crew come in. It's a lot cheaper to buy a great big barrel of pretzels and then take out, a cupful and put it in a Ziploc bag and portion it out. So we have a group of people that come in and do that from 10 to 11.
That way, when we're serving, we don't have to worry about portion control. We grab a baggie or a cup and it goes in the meal. So on the service end, it just makes it more efficient.
Yeah.
Sure.
And cost efficient too. So, and then about 11:15, we load up. We can get into the schools at 11:30. We start to prep. Most of them go ahead and get some of the meals going. They figure out who's going to do what, and they get their little line going. Some people, all they do is hand the meals to the people at the door. Others, are wrapping up hot dogs in foil and different things like that. Somebody's counting.
It's assembly line process.
Yeah, assembly line. That was the word I was looking for.
Yeah, and so we'll stack up meals, and then that's where the GRIN rep will help because he knows the families, and as a family or a parent or a child is coming to the door, he'll say, I need 4 or I need 2 and so we're bagging them, and so they come in and they get their stuff, and it keeps moving, and as our stack starts to get small, we start reassembly and just keep putting meals together until it's done.
Yeah. We serve 12 to 1:00. And then at 1:00, we clean up. We bring everything back to the church. We sort things out, clean up, and get ready for the next day. And we're usually home by 2.
And give me an idea of I know we had talked about the fact that you're really well resourced as far as your volunteers, and kind of what's the team look like? How many people do we have working on the lunch program?
This year, I think we have 12 every day on the assembly line. That's a good word. And then we have 3 coming in the morning to do the portion control. So 15, 16, 17 of us.
Wonderful. Now, I realize that you're pretty well staffed for this year. Are there other ways that people can help in support, or if they would be interested, do we know, when do we find out for next year, like when our time is going to be, and how can they get involved if they'd like to be involved?
Just let me know, and I'll get your name on a list. I have lots of papers and folders that I've started, and so I would be more than happy to add your name to the list. Sometimes we have so many workers that somebody will work Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and someone else will work Tuesday, Thursday, just so that we can give everybody a chance to serve. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be doing this. I mean, I hope I can do it for a while, but I would like to have somebody kind of in my back pocket ready to take over. So if there is anybody that's interested in coming and helping for at least one more year, I would think a shadowing year would be good. Then whenever I'm ready to step down, it'll be a smooth transition.
A good leader always trains a replacement.
Well, yeah, you should be in a spot where you're not missed. So that's
or if something would happen, you wouldn't have to just hand it off to someone cold and they would have to try to figure out what's going on. Although she's got good notes. So I think it would be kind of easy for anybody to pick it up.
All right. Well, that is coming up this week. Be praying for them as they're doing their work. That's going to be starting on June 16th, right after Father's Day. And you can also, if you would be interested in helping out in the future, you can contact Cristy either in person here at the Gahanna campus or email podcast@shepnaz.org. And we'll make sure she gets that message to let her know that you would like to be involved as well. You can also check out everything that's going on at the church at shepnaz.org. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. For Bob and Cristy, I'm Joe. Have a great day. This podcast is a production of the Shepherd Church of the Nazarene, Gahanna, Ohio. Email to podcast@shepnaz.org and let us know what you think.